Hello, everyone who's joining in the Zoom call today. Thank you for being here. My name is Sophie Hinch, and I'm the Education and Public Programs Coordinator at the Art Gallery of Windsor, and I'm so glad that you'll be able to join us today on this beautiful Saturday for a virtual tour of 401 West, Portrait of the Region. Today is May Day. It's also the start of the MAYWORKS Festival. So we're so glad that you'll be able to celebrate with us today. The MAYWORKS Festival was founded by the Toronto and York Region Labour Council. And the MAYWORKS Festival of Working People in the Arts is a community-based festival which celebrates artists, workers, and activists. The programming presents bold, insightful responses to pressing issues at the intersection of art, social justice, and labor. So today, some of the works that we will be examining and going over together really looks into that relationship between the artist and the worker as an artist. Before we begin, I'd like to take just another moment to acknowledge the land on which we gather today. So while this exhibition tour is happening digitally today, I want to acknowledge that I'm physically situated on Anishinaabe territory, the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of First Nations, comprised of the Ojibwe, the Adawa, and the Potawatomi. And today, the Anishinaabe of the Three Fires Confederacy are represented by Walpole Island First Nation, and we want to state our respect of the historical and ongoing authority of Walpole Island First Nation over its territory. So here's just a little sneak peek of what the exhibition looked like at the AGW. But this exhibition, 401 West Portrait of the Region, featured 20 artists from the permanent collection, showcasing 73 works. Artists from the 1940s to present day explore aspects of the region through diverse media representing the cultural communities of London, Windsor, Chatham, and Detroit. And there is a wide variety of paintings, photography, sculptures, and the graphic arts, which were on view as well. So here we get a really great view, and we can really see the difference between all of the works. We can see paintings, we can see photography, we can see sculptures and installations. So we'll do a little bit of a deep dive on some of the works that were included in this exhibition that really celebrate the land, that really celebrates the artist as a worker, and the worker as an artist. So we'll jump right in with the work that you can see on the left-hand side of your screen. And I do have some close-ups of this work as well. The artist here is Ron Benner, and this work is entitled As Dark as the Grave Wherein My Friend Is Laid. It was created between 1975 and 1976, and it's a photographic mural with tar, and there are 6 panels in total. So I'll start with a little bit of information about the artist. Ron Benner was born in 1949 in London, Ontario. He studied at the university in Guelph, and upon his return to London in 1970, Benner established his art practice. He was really interested at the time, and he was really ethically opposed to bioengineering, which might have been a new concept at the time or a new technology. And he began to travel and research the politics of food and work as an artist in London, Ontario. Here's a little bit more information about the work, and as I'm speaking, I invite you to really look at each panel individually, to really slow down, get comfortable, settle in, and really read the work as you would almost like a book. So from left to right, up and down, really take the time to slow down and look at all the elements. So the photograph, that's kind of the first thing that I see when looking at this work. I can clearly see it's based on a photo. But the photo that's being used in this work was taken by Sam McLeod for the London Free Press to report a train derailment in Simcoe, Ontario. Two of Benner's friends and co-workers, Edward Wadley, the engineer, and Ray Merritt was the hand-end brakeman, died in the accident. At the time, Benner was working as a spare brakeman for the train company, and he could have been on that train if either of his coworkers had been unable to make the trip. So you can really feel the sense of almost guilt from the artist, maybe, or there's lots of emotion in this work here. I can only imagine what the artist must have felt when he had learned of this really tragic accident and that he lost two of his friends. But he channeled that energy and created this really emotional and really brave work of art as well. Tar is added to the reproduction of the original image, which is then rephotographed, and more tar is added over top. And in the 6 panels of this series, we can see they get progressively darker and darker as we move from left to right. And we can see in the last panel there, we can get a little bit of a sneak peek, but it's completely blackened. We cannot see the train anymore. And I do have a closer up image that we can take a look at in just a while. But the work is both a testimony to the men who tragically died on the train in this horrific accident, and it also interrogates, and it's an interrogation of the newspaper photograph that kind of used this horrible accident and made spectacle and this really big deal out of grief in this accident. And in 1996, he wrote, and I have it up on the screen if you'd like to follow along. Some of my ancestors have worked on the railroad since the late 1800s. My grandfather was an operator and dispatcher for the CN Wabash. My father was a fireman and engineer for the CNR, and I worked for the Norfolk and Western Railroad out of St. Thomas, Ontario from 1970 at age 21 to 1980 as a brakeman and conductor. It has been said that the railroad gets in your blood, and this is partly true, but I have no regrets having quit the railroad. I miss the camaraderie, the amazing landscapes, both at night and day, the smells, the sounds. However, I realize the railroads have a tainted, unsympathetic history vis-a-vis First Nations, the land, working conditions, etc. I also know that the railroad life contributed to my becoming a full-blown alcoholic by the time I was 40. That said, I am both attracted and repulsed by the train. So I thought that was a really interesting statement to make paired with this work as well. We get a little bit more insight into what the artist was thinking and experiencing at the time as well, working on the railroad and really having it in your blood, right? All of his family members at some point might have worked on the train tracks as well. So we have a close-up image here of the work, and you can clearly see the progression as the artist applies more and more tar on all of the panels. We can also clearly get a sense of the image that was used. You can see the train that was derailed pretty clearly in the first image, and as the series progresses, the image becomes more and more blackened. And we get a full view here in the gallery. This is a really powerful series of works. You can see the last image there. We get a really clear view that it's completely black and we can't see the image anymore. I always got the sense that it was almost like the artist was making a statement that he's kind of protecting that image. So that's the first piece. The second piece is also found in this image here. And I'd like to draw your attention to the little blob here that we can kind of see on the ground here, but it's not a blob, it's actually a sculpture. It's a work of art. And we'll take a closer look here. We can get a better view of the work itself. The artist here is Zeke Morris, and it's entitled Moving Blanket. It was created in 2013, and it's a cast aluminum piece, etched and waxed. So at first glance, it might look like an ordinary blanket. I almost want to reach out and touch it and grab it. It looks really cozy and warm, but it is made out of metal. The artist cast it out of aluminum. So it's quite heavy, it's quite stiff, it's stationary, it won't move. So it's kind of a play on materials as well. So a little bit more about the artist, Zeke Morris. The artist spent his youth and early adult life in Newfoundland and Nova Scotia and moved to Windsor in 2003. He's a BFA graduate of the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design, and he received his MFA from the University of Windsor. From 2006 to 2015, he worked as a sessional instructor at the University of Windsor in metal fabrication. And he's also educated as a blacksmith and brings his experience to his sculptures and his works. And in 2011, Morris was shortlisted for the prestigious Sobey Art Award, recognizing Canadian artists under the age of 40, and he was longlisted in 2015. So Zeke is a very accomplished artist for sure. And here's some information about the work as well. So this work challenges continuing traditions of naturalism and illusion, which we kind of talked and touched upon at the beginning there, right? That contrast between the material and what the object is, and familiarity as well. So Morris plays with the slippery relationship among our conceptions of utility, disposability, and value, and toys with consumerism and the fleeting engagement we can simultaneously bring to discarded cardboard boxes and a gallery-approved piece of contemporary art. So this work is entitled Moving Blanket. So this blanket, or the original blanket, might have been used to move some artwork or move furniture or objects. But what happens once we don't need that blanket anymore? Where does it go? Where does it end up? Zeke Morris here, he had explained that while he was installing an exhibition of his cast cardboard boxes, which were wrapped for transit in a commercial moving blanket, he responded to the shapes and the folds of the blanket lying on the floor. The resultant artwork is a heavy cast aluminum sculpture. In contrast to its original form, Moving Blanket defies visual logic. It tricks us a little bit, right? The work comments on consumerism and the ephemeral in contemporary life, while pushing the roles of materiality and craftsmanship within histories of illusionism. The next work here, it might be familiar. I'm sure it's a view that a lot of people are familiar with. It is quite abstract and quite simplified. We can see really distinct shapes and rectangles stacked on top of one another. There's not a lot of details or information, but we can clearly see that this is the Detroit skyline. And the artist here is Frederick B. Taylor, and this is entitled Downtown Detroit, Michigan from Riverview Park, Windsor. And it was created in 1953, and it's an oil on panel, and it's just a little sketch, so it's not very big, but I thought it was just such a lovely sketch that is quite iconic, especially in this region. Frederick Taylor was born in Ottawa, Ontario, and in 1930, he graduated from McGill University with a Bachelor of Architecture degree. And he also studied visual arts in London, England, at the University of London. Taylor's work was extensively exhibited in solo exhibitions in Montreal, Toronto, and in Ottawa between 1932 and 1963. So again, a very simple piece, but easily recognizable. And we can clearly see just the softness of the color palette. I think that's what attracted me to this piece. Just the very muted colors, the simple brush strokes. It's nothing too fancy, nothing too crazy, but it gives it a really nice texture and movement. The brush strokes in the water, creating the really soft waves. Also the movement and the brushstrokes of the buildings going upwards. So really taking our eyes up and really emphasizing the skyscrapers and the buildings. They're really simple shapes, right? If you look at it, I'm looking at these rectangles. Hopefully you can all see my arrow there, but very simple shapes. I can see, I'm guessing what is the outline of maybe a boat or a ship here on the water, but a very recognizable image for sure. We have another work here by the same artist, by Frederick B. Taylor. And this one is entitled Looking South over Windsor, Ontario, 1952. And for some of you here on the call, I'm sure that some of these buildings might look a little bit familiar, especially if you're from the area, and you might have some memories of this place and these spaces as well. But a commissions by the Seagram's Company was offered to Taylor to do a painting of Windsor, Ontario for an exhibition and a book titled Cities of Canada. So I thought that was a pretty interesting little fact, a little bit of information about this work in particular. And by the early 1950s, the Canadian census indicated that the greatest percentage of the population lived in urban areas, and it was Seagram's owner Samuel Bronfman who wished to promote recognition of Canada's status with respect to its urban development. And artists participating in the project produced more than one sketch for consideration for a final work. And Looking South over Windsor, Ontario was a sketch for a canvas for the Seagram's collection. And the composition of Looking South over Windsor, Ontario is nearly identical to that of the final canvas. And because of the former is a sketch and the latter is a finished painting, the coloring and brushwork differ in each. They're a little bit different, but again, the composition remains the same. The sketch possesses a spontaneity and quickness of execution not found in the final work. And I think that's something that can be said by for a lot of sketches just in general, right? Sketches are more trying to capture the emotion or the expression or the mood of the place rather than literally depicting it. The sketch was created in December 1952, and the work downtown Detroit, Michigan from Riverview Park, Windsor, which was the work that we just saw, was produced on New Year's Day in 1953. So just to give you an idea of when the works were created, this is a work by the artist Tom Benner, and it's entitled Homage to the White Pine, and it was produced in 1984, and it's cold rolled metal with nails. And it doesn't look very big here in this photo here. I think it's a trick of the camera or of the screen, but it's actually quite a large sculpture. It's a really tall work of art. I want to say about maybe between 8 to 10 feet tall. It's really quite large and imposing, and you can walk right up to it. You can walk around it and really look up and experience the texture and the colors and the rust of the nails and the coolness of the metal. It's quite a dangerous piece as well. It might not be something that you want to get too close to, but we'll take a closer look at the artist and the work itself. Tom Benner was based in London, Ontario, and he has introduced his own visual interpretations of Canadian icons such as the white pine that we can see here on our screen. And his 1926 poem, The Lonely Land, Arthur J.M. Smith provided a poetic manifestation of the Canadian landscape that really spoke to Tom Benner, and he kind of used that as a roadmap for his works and for the direction of his works as well. The group of seven, which I think most Canadians must be familiar with, but the group of seven introduced a new visual iconography with their particular depictions of nature. They really worked together as a group to develop a little bit our national identity through landscapes. They painted in the great outdoors and they tried to capture as many different landscapes as possible. And this form of pictorial symbolism, it's also a very metaphorical representation of the constructed environments and how they are perceived or lived in. And in this work, Tom Benner has rendered his version of the jagged white pine inspired by nature, but constructed from cold rolled metal and nails. By visually representing aspects of the natural world, altered through the use of manufactured materials, the artist has imparted his observations about the impact of consumer and material culture while providing a commentary on the evolving human relationship to nature. We'll also take a look at a little bit of a closer up image so you can really get the sense of how the artist created this work. You can see all the little spikes and the pine needles and the metal, how it's all pieced together to really resemble almost tree bark. So I thought it was a really interesting reimagining of a Canadian icon such as the white pine. And we'll take a look at it in the space here. And I want to draw your attention to the work on the far right here, which was also created by the same artist. So we can see here another work by Tom Benner, also entitled White Pine. This one was created in 1989, and it's a color lino cut on paper. And for those who are unfamiliar with the term lino cut, the artist would have used a plate of linoleum, essentially, and some tools to carve the image. And then they would use either a roller or a paintbrush or something, a tool, to apply ink onto that plate. And then the image was transferred onto a piece of paper, kind of like a stamp. So I was creating this very unique stamp. And we can see here in the next slide, you can see very clearly where the artist has carved out some of the details. We can see the tree bark and the texture, all those lines. You can almost feel the fuzziness or the warmness of the pine needles as well. It looks very, very soft, which is kind of in contrast to the sculpture of the white pine. So again, playing with comparisons and contrasts as well. We'll go on to the next work here, and this is work by Mary Celestino, who was an artist and an educator and environmental advocate. She received her BFA from the University of Windsor in 1972, and in 1975, she received her MA, and in 1977, an MFA from Wayne State University in Detroit. Following her studies, she taught as an art instructor and lecturer at both universities, so in Windsor and in Detroit as well. And this work here is entitled Henry's Marsh, Point Pelee, Ontario, aka or also known as the Lost Garden and Eden, just after the fall, Browns Point, 1995. And it was produced in 1995. And this work, as I'll go back to the image there, just so you can get an idea of the scale, but also really quite large, almost like a window. We're looking through at this landscape, really inviting and bringing us into this world. But it's also cut off, right? So we don't see where the tree trunk ends and where it begins. So again, that illusion of a window into a landscape. Mary Celestino's passion for interpreting the landscape of Pelee Island arose from her first direct experience on the island, where she witnessed a wild and fascinating state of nature. Following the artist's move to the island with her husband in 1990, she had the opportunity to observe nature's interactions with the land on an ongoing basis, particularly with respect to destruction and erosion of the shoreline. And in her writing, Celestino asserted that nature always gave back something in exchange for what was taken away: renewed life. Man, unlike nature, has the ability to annihilate an entire ecology in one single season. Where nature renews life, man destroys. We do it through the pollution of our lakes and rivers. So, a really strong, powerful statement from the artist here, who has lived on Pelee Island and really seen firsthand the destruction and the impact that man and industry has on the land. I was just at Point Pelee yesterday. I went for a walk. It was such a nice day, and walking along the shoreline, how important it is to take care of our environment. There's so many plants and species that call this area home. So it's kind of our duty to take care of it. And Mary Celestino is certainly doing her part by using her talents and her work to really call attention to this really important issue. Here are the next series of works, and I believe I have 3 different photos from the same artist here. This is Stan Douglas, who was born in Vancouver in 1960, and he studied at the Emily Carr College of Art and Design. And he's a photographer and has traveled all over capturing these really important moments in time. And photography, I think, is such a great medium to use to really capture a place as it is and as we see it. This one here is entitled "The Office Building on 8 Mile Road" from the series Le Détroit, and it was produced in 1998. The artist Stan Douglas produced a captivating series of photographs over a period of wide-ranging research in Detroit. The artist's cycles of photographs captured the condition of urban decline in a large modern city, and his works reveal the aftermath of socioeconomic shifts which transformed urban areas from vital communities to uninhabited neighborhoods and business districts. Douglas's photographs include abandoned and damaged office buildings, as we can see here on the screen, and the remnants of a theater, symbolizing the loss of a vibrant cultural presence that was reconfigured into a makeshift car park. And before I switch over to the next slide, I want you to kind of close your eyes or picture, imagine this really beautiful, ornate theater. Here is how it can be found today. They transformed it into a car park. It looks a little bit to me like a surreal image. It looks photoshopped. It doesn't look quite real, right? The first part, the top half of this theater here, you can see the craftsmanship that went into building such a structure. You can see the detail and the paint and the colors and the patterns. I can't help but imagine what it would have looked like at the time, just with the lights and all of these shows. In Detroit, there are so many abandoned places and spaces as people move away from the city. And we can see here another work, again from the same series, from Stan Douglas, entitled "Row Houses at Herman Gardens," again from the series Le Détroit. And we can see the boarded up windows, the broken glass, the unkept lawn, the fallen tree branches, the kind of the debris that's fallen on the ground here. I can also see on the left-hand side here, it looks like somebody left a couch out on the yard. So again, as people move away from city centers, um, what happens to the buildings, what happens to the homes and the memories that were made in this place as well. The next work that I'd like to share is by the artist Lisa Steele and Kim Tomzak, and it's entitled Bump in the Night, Windsor, Detroit, and it was produced in 2016. There are 15 prints in total, and they're also quite large images. But Lisa and Kim's Bump in the Night, Windsor, Detroit is a continuation of a series of photo and text works started in 2001 that has been included in exhibitions across Canada, and it has also included and involved participants from Toronto, France, Germany, Barrie, Vancouver, and Halifax. And for this project, Steele and Tomzak worked with groups of young people who were at the time going through transitions in their lives. And they recorded short interviews with the youth as well as photographing them. And we can see 3 figures here as well. So these were some of the youth that were involved in the projects. But the resulting works become almost like an anonymous unportrait by layering some of the interviews and the text from the participants over the images. In some ways, they're less about the individuals and more about the sentiment of a group of young people who are in one place at one time. Again, photography is such a great tool to capture a moment in time, and adding another layer of text and interview and interaction, I think it's a really successful and powerful project. So for this series in Windsor, Steele and Tomzak worked with the Windsor Youth Center. The Windsor Youth Center is a drop-in center offering support to homeless or underhoused youth. And in Detroit, they worked with the Detroit Hispanic Development Corporation, which is a non-for-profit organization committed to creating life-changing opportunities for youth and their families. And both in Windsor and Detroit, the artists ask the youth a series of questions, such as, what is your favorite color? Relate something funny that happened last week, or relate a recent dream, or what are you afraid of? So some really simple questions. But as we can see on the screen here, some really interesting stories as well. So Lisa Steele and Kim Tomzak have worked exclusively in collaboration since 1983, producing videotapes, performances, photos, and text works. So some really interesting stories as a way to create, as they call it, an unportrait. So adding layers of meaning to some of the works. Here's another work that uses the Detroit skyline as a subject. I'm always so taken aback by it. Going to Detroit was one of my favorite activities, and I haven't been in over a year. I know for a lot of us, going over there either to a baseball game or to do some shopping or going to the DIA, it was such a part of our routine. So to see Detroit, I'm always a little bit nostalgic, and I can't wait for the day when we'll be able to go back. The artist here, I hope I'm going to pronounce their name correctly, but Nicholas Horyansky was born in Budapest, Hungary in 1896, and he studied at the Academy of Fine Arts in Budapest, also in Vienna, Munich, and in Paris as well. And the artist and his family moved to Canada in 1929. He has quite an established reputation as a painter. He was a printmaker as well, so really working in a variety of different materials. The artist is known for his landscape images, which feature sites in Ontario, Quebec, and the Maritimes as well. And as early as the 1940s, he formed an association within the Windsor area through the Windsor Arts Association. And he worked with others, creating these really beautiful images or portraits of the region that they were either living in at the moment or that they had visited. Some really beautiful color palette. Again, it makes me think of the Frederick B. Taylor that we saw at the beginning, that same muted color palettes, those really rich purples, the pastel. It's almost like a pastel purple. The browns, the blacks, the blues. We can really see the movement of the water and the waves and the rippling. The reflection is really quite clear as well. And just the light little steam from the steamboats kind of billowing over the skyline. And we can see here close up all the little beautiful details that we didn't necessarily see when we were kind of pulled back, but you can see the windows and the lights, but just that little hint of a light on in the building, and all the little windows and the details on the boats as well, and the lines and the power lines and the chimneys. Just a really beautiful little portrait. It's almost like a landscape and a portrait all in one. If you're interested, you can always visit us online at agw.ca. We'll be posting the recording of this tour. If you'd like to go back and revisit it, we'll be posting it here on our website for our celebrations of MAYWORKS. Don't forget to also check out our art space, Art Walk. I take you through Windsor and showcase 4 different cultural and artistic institutions in the city, who all have window displays or works that can be seen from the windows. So I take you to the Art Gallery of Windsor, to Art Site Inc., to 110 Park, a working space, and to the Arts Council of Windsor in region. Again, thank you all for being here today. I really appreciate you all. And I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your weekend and enjoy.